About that.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, right at the cusp. My name is Celeste Fraser. I'm on the board of the Estes Valley Watershed Coalition. And I'll introduce our speaker in just a minute, but I wanted to know how you all heard about this talk. Did you hear about it through the newspaper? Yeah? Okay. Online?
We got an email.
Pardon me?
We got an email.
Oh, an email, good. And are you all, raise your hands if you are members of our Wandering Wildlife Society. Okay, very good. All right, and raise your hand if you're members of the Garden Club. Oh, good showing, everybody. All right, well, welcome. We have today Brian Berg, who is the resident tree hugger in Estes Park. He's been here 12 years and is, if you want him to check your trees, he can come do that, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And he's going to tell us today about what's eating the trees. So both diseases and infestations, and what we can do about it, if anything. Before I forget, our next talk is about pikas, and that is January 26th at night, 6 to 7 p.m. And we've got a scientist from CU who's been studying pikas and pika behavior, and will tell us how the pikas are faring in relation to climate change. Well, Brian, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody for coming. Yeah, I'm Brian. Like she said, I've been in Estes for 12 years. I work for the town of Estes Park. I'm the town park supervisor. I'm also the ISA certified arborist for the town. I've been certified ISA for, 10 years, supervisor for 7, and been doing tree work pretty much all my adult life. Climbed trees when I was a kid back in Wisconsin. Graduated from Gunnison, Western State, with an environmental studies and biology degree. Everybody hear me all right? I've been told I'm almost. We're good? All right. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and we'll dive into it. Just want to do a overview. So basically, I'm going to talk about native trees, diseases, and insects in the Estes Valley. Then kind of expand the talk, proper planting techniques, pruning, maintenance, and some other trees that we've been trialing out here at the Parks Division that might work up here that you'd never think that would. Some ornamental and trials, and as was presented earlier, always ask us. I'm happy to come on out and check your trees, check what it's got, what it might not have, give you some ideas or my opinion on what you might want to do with it. And then, it's a small group, so if you guys have questions, just raise your hand. I'll try to get at you right away, and then otherwise, if there's any coming in on the worldwide internet, we'll just take those at the end. That's all right. But yeah, pretty much conversation, so jump in if you have any specifics. But I'm just going to go right on through. I have 10,000 slides, so it should go pretty quick. And if I make sure I get this button right, yep. We'll start with native trees in the Estes Valley. Probably the biggest one, not only the biggest, but the most prevalent is the ponderosa pine. We live in a ponderosa pine forest, basically, in the Estes Valley. The hills and whatnot have other conifers and deciduous, but the mainstay of the Estes Valley is the ponderosa forest. That's why they do so well. But there's a lot out there that attack them. As you hopefully are all aware of, the mountain pine beetle. That's a native. Mountain pine beetle and the Yps beetle to the right are native beetles that the ponderosa pine, these beetles have been dancing this for thousands and thousands of years. So it doesn't freak me out too much. But when I first got here, I guess we were in pretty good drought until the 2013 flood kind of switched over, but we had a really an epidemic of mountain pine beetle here in the Estes Valley. That in turn caused almost everybody to spray their trees, right? Everyone was spraying their trees like crazy to the Estes Valley to save them from the mountain pine beetle. Nowadays, the mountain pine beetle, I see it few and far between, mostly up in the park and in some already sickly or damaged trees through construction, utility construction, roadwork construction. The injured tree sends off some pheromones that turn, and the beetles are attracted to that. And that's why these beetles will smoke those injured trees faster. But since 2013, really, here in the Estes Valley, we haven't been too dry, and the trees have really been strong enough to prevent these little guys, especially the mountain pine beetle. On that picture on the left, you can see kind of that bubble gum, popcorn, whatever you have. That's the tree trying to push that beetle back out once it digs in. So that's the natural system of how it defends itself. In drought times, they don't have as much sap to be able to push out those beetles. That's why the beetles can get in, lay their eggs, and the eggs make the galleries, and really stop the transportation of nutrients and water going up and down the tree. But both of these two beetles also carry the blue stain fungus, and that's usually what kills the tree, not the beetles themselves. The fungus gets in the vascular system, kind of chokes it off, and doesn't allow the trees nutrients and water to go up and down through the xylem and phloem.
Where does the fungus come from?
It's just on the beetle. So if they were born in a tree with a blue stain fungus, they fly off with it, jump into the next tree, and infect the tree with blue stain fungus.
Are those little beetles on top of the Epps beetle?
Little hairs. Oh, those are little bugs, yeah. Those aren't. I didn't even notice that when I put the picture in there. I don't know what the hell those are. Sorry about that. But yeah, these are usually the two that infect the ponderosa pine. The Ipps beetle starts from the top. So if you have some dead or dying up top, usually it's Ipps beetle. If you get some branches in the middle and it's going all up, that's the mountain pine beetle. And then there's something else coming into the valley that I want to go deeper into a couple slides down, but this is more of the native stuff that I want to talk about right now. Dwarf mistletoe, it's all over the valley. This is like a slow, painful death for a tree. A lot of times this won't directly kill the tree, but it takes so much nutrients out that it leaves the tree susceptible to other things like the mountain pine beetle or the Ipps beetle. Dwarf mistletoe is kind of a tough one to deal with. You can prune the branch that the dwarf mistletoe is on, and once that branch is pruned off, the dwarf mistletoe loses all of its nutrients and dies. However, some trees are so littered with it, the only choice is really a one-cut prune. But again, it's not an instant death. I mean, this could take 20, 30 years to actually kill the tree once it's totally engulfed. If you can't prune it all off, there is a treatment for it, but the treatment's expensive and it only works for that season. So it only stops the spores from coming out that season, if that makes sense. So you'd have to treat the mistletoe every year in order to stop it from spreading.
Would you recommend pruning first before cutting the tree down?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you can prune all of it out, great. If you see it on one branch, get on it for sure. Because once this thing goes to spore, it just puffs out a bunch of spores and it could infect the whole neighborhood, depending on the wind. So, yeah, but if a tree's just totally inundated with it, that's my recommendation, is the one cut prune.
When does it go to spore? Is that seasonal?
Yeah, it's like August, I believe, August, September in there. But yeah, if you can see it in the winter, plain as day, that's the best time, obviously, to prune pondos. Or not obviously, I should explain that. The best time to prune pondos is definitely in the winter. That's when all the bugs and stuff are sleeping, so they don't send any pheromones off or that smell of a wound for the bugs to come after it, because there's no bugs in the winter. That's why we only prune in the winter, even our street trees, especially on the pondos. All right, needle miner. We actually, have a great view. That whole hillside over there was littered with needle miner about 5 years ago. The entire hill had it, and probably 6 years ago, I guess. But needle miner is just this little bug, jumps in the needle, eats about halfway down, and then lays its eggs. And so you have this needle, full needle, only half of it's green, half of it's brown. That's because the needle miner is up in there. I think the reason this has kind of disappeared is because so many people have stopped spraying their trees just for no reason. Because there's a parasitic wasp that loves these little guys. And they'll take care of the problem for us. You don't really have to get after it. And that whole mountainside on the other side of the lake was just half brown. And now it's fine. Because the natural state of things came back in once we allowed it to happen, and we're back up and running. So that's always my example of needle miner. I actually have, I know Merle knows him, but Dr. Whitney Crenshaw come up from CSU just because it was so crazy around here about having it 6 years ago. I'm not getting that old, but I remember it. And he came up and he was amazed that the whole hillside was smoked. But then we got closer and we identified needle miner. And I talked to a lot of the residents that owned more property. They were going to stop spraying anyways because mountain pine beetle wasn't such a problem. And man, it just turned over. It was really cool, kind of dorky tree dork experiment. That's me.
Will the needle miner kill a tree?
It can, it's more like mistletoe. You know, it stops half of the photosynthesis from happening. So it's more like an annoyance, you know, and if the tree's strong enough to make it on that half for that year or two before the parasitic wasp comes in and really smokes the needle miner, they should be okay. There is also spray there. You know, I like spraying for some things. I don't like spraying for a lot of things. I think the natural world can take care of itself mostly. So this one is a timing one, just like the mistletoe, and it's hit or miss too, because you're really trying to get the needle miner when it's outside of the needle, or once the larvae come outside of the needle. And that's a timing thing, microscopes and a whole lot of luck, I think. Saying that there's one thing that scares me up here for the ponderosa pine, and this is it, pine will. This started down valley, as all the crap that we get normally does. In Scotch pines, it was said to only be in Scotch pines for years and years and years until it snuck up around Carter Lake in the ponderosa pine. And then after Carter Lake, it got up around Red Feather, and it started smoking pondos up in Red Feather. And then, was it 4 or 5 years ago, we had a confirmed case here in the Estes Valley. And the reason I talk about the history is just, it's odd that something comes from the Scotch pines and switches over to a pondo, but they are very close cousins. But it was still odd that it came through. So I think it doesn't have anything to do with drought or susceptibility. I think they were just, the nematode that actually causes the pine wilt just figured out that it can start jumping into pondos too, through probably evolution of some sort. And pine wilt is a nematode. I have this giant bug on there. That's the sword beetle. I'm sure we've all seen it. It's that 747 beetle that flies around and freaks you out because there's no way that thing that big should be flying, right? And this guy usually has no problems with pondos. It only feeds on dead wood. It lays its egg in dead wood. But for like a week or two after it hatches out of the dead wood, it hops up on like the tips of ponderosa pines and just barely eats a couple needles. And that's when the nematode can get off its head into the pondo and then into the vascular system and kill the pondo in like less than a year. So
What's a nematode?
Nematode is like a little, I always describe it as, you know, when you close your eyes and you see that thing in your eye, and you move your eye and it kind of moves with it, and it's that little squiggly thing, that's a nematode. It's in your eye. But this is a nematode on a bug's head. Really small, really small. Does that make sense? That's the way I make sense to it in my head.
So it itself is an insect?
Yeah, like smaller than an insect. I don't know if it's quite an insect or if it's a separate classification, like something else.
So it's like a parasite on this thing?
Parasite, yeah, I'd say something between parasite and an insect. Is
Okay.
the nematode. That's what I'd say. Go ahead.
Does the Sawyer beetle lay its eggs in dead wood? You said,
Oh,
is
yeah,
it
yeah.
partially cut dead wood, or is it dead wood that's been sitting in a wood pile for
Either way.
50 years?
Either way.
Either way.
Yeah. And you can actually hear these guys chomping. Like if you buy a wood pile and you ever hear like a, that's these guys, just digging in and starting to lay their eggs. So the reason this is so transferring to new trees is because a tree with pine wood was cut down, left for firewood. Sawyer beetle jumped in, got the nematode on its head, flew off, ate on a pondo for, a week, and then went and laid its eggs in another. Then that tree dies, right? Cuts down, left for firewood, and the process continues. The only way to really identify that your tree died from pine wilt at this point in time is to get a cookie, and the cookie is just a slab of the trunk, about breast height, and CSU will test it for you. And the last sample I got tested down there came back negative, thankfully, but it took them quite a while before they got it. I think it was like 4 to 5 months before they sent the results back to me. But I wasn't paying either. So maybe if like a homeowner said, I'll pay you, they might do it faster.
Brian, is it accurate that the surface of the tree under the bark turns black with pine wilt?
It is accurate, yes, at some stage of it. This one's hard for me to explain once I come to a tree too, because it dies so quick. Like if you lose a branch and it browns out, and then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, the whole tree's dead, that gives me the evidence to think pine wilt. However, a lot of the trees that have that same evidence also sent out those sick pheromones, and they got beetles in them, and they might have blue stain. So usually it's the Ips. So it's like one of those chicken or the eggs, right? Did the blue stain kill it, or did the pine wilt kill it? And without sending that sample off, you have no way of really knowing if it was pine wilt. The evidence is clear as day if it was blue stain fungus, or you can check the top of the tree and there's galleries, Ips beetle, and you're like, oh yeah, for sure, this is Ips beetle. But then you talk to the homeowner that the tree died on, and if they give the explanation that I want to hear of that one branch and then all of a sudden it got smoked, that leads me to believe pine wilt. So it's really how the tree died, not so much what the evidence is in it that makes me nervous about this. Because if it's a Ips beetle, and you just chip up all the tops of the branches where the galleries are, you think you're safe and you can keep the rest for firewood. But if it was pine wilt, you're not really safe, because you're basically allowing the next generation of Sawyer beetle to jump in and spread it. So I've seen maybe 24 pondos die from this with my eyes, that I can be sure of. But I know there's a lot of trees failing through the valley that I haven't had eyes on. So this one scares me. Enough said about that. Scary. This one's gonna smoke us. Moving on, if it's all right with y'all, I'd like to go to spruce. We got a couple around here. Colorado blue is obviously the most, everyone's favorite, because it says Colorado blue spruce, and you get a blue one, sometimes you get a green one. Everyone loves planting these things up on Carriage Hills where there's no water, or up over on that hill where there's no water, and they call me and ask why their tree sucks. It looks like a Charlie Brown tree. Because spruce trees love water, and they love good soil, that of which are not really prevalent in a ponderosa pine forest, which we live in. So when you see those sickly Charlie Brown spruces, it's because it's the wrong tree in the wrong spot. Sometimes you get lucky and the spruce can tap in some underground water, or you have like irrigation and you do soil amendments, and you get this beautiful blue spruce tree in town somewhere. But most of the time they're hating life. That's why you see them in the veins of the mountains, you know, down waterways, and they look just great because they have everything they need. When we put them in the wrong spot, that's when they look poor. Now it's given to, I mean, I love the tree, don't get me wrong, I just hate seeing them struggle through life in some places. Some of the things that get spruce beetle, I'm sure you're all aware, and maybe I'm telling you this, but it's up in the park, right? And it's coming this way. Slowly but surely, I think it's gonna hit the fish hatchery property probably first. We have some great spruce trees there. That's when it's gonna get on my radar, because that's the first town-owned property next to the park. I know it's slowly working its way down there. I know tree dorks up in the park that let me know how far it's been going, where it's coming. So it's gonna eventually get here, and it's gonna hurt, but you can preemptively spray for spruce beetle just like you can preemptively spray for mountain pine beetle. So once it gets closer, I'm sure I'm gonna throw out the alarm and let people know so that they can spray if they like. And it should be, like, they've gotten way better at spraying where they can do truck treatments, and that gets in the vascular system, so you don't have to spray the entire tree and kill all the bugs.
What does it look like when it attacks it?
It's very similar to the mountain pine beetle. It goes in, if it has enough sap, it'll try to push it out. So it'll do that bubble gums.
And so you won't see any damage on the tree until later.
Yeah, if you see those puffs, I mean, spruce bleed a lot, sap bleed, on their wounds and stuff like that, but this one will be kind of noticeable, like little pockets of holes where it's trying to pump out, if it's a healthy tree and it has enough moisture to be able to do that. If it hits somewhere up on the hill over here where it's not irrigated, you probably won't see any of that sap. It'll probably just go in and start browning out, and then it's past the point. But no worries yet on this one. More so,
When people spray trees, is that safe for animals, domestic animals? Dogs, cats?
I mean, use most chemicals that are certified, well, you know, I don't want to stick my foot in my mouth here. The feds certified chemicals. The feds say it's okay and it's not, doesn't hurt domestic animals. I'm forced to agree with that.
Good answer.
Safe, eh? That was safe, right? I shouldn't get in trouble for that one. But, you know, I've heard stories of it hurting birds and stuff like that. I haven't seen it. I know spraying a full tree usually has an effect on the bad bugs as well as the good bugs. And I think that's what got us into that needle miner problem a few years back. I know now what I see out and about, the trees are pretty darn healthy on their own, and I'm talking the good bugs, the predatory bugs are coming back for the turtle scale and the oyster scale, and they're cleaning off the aphids. If you spray on all your trees, you're not gonna have that natural process so much. But you're gonna stop the tree from getting X bug. Spruce scale. This was pretty big a few years ago too. I still see it every once in a while. On a spruce tree, it almost looks like you sprayed that fake snow paint on it. You know what I'm saying? From back in the day, that you spray windows and stuff. It's just little white dots. This one's really easy to treat. There's a couple different ways. I mean, you just see it. You just look at the needle, you see the white dots. You got a spruce scale. It's a done deal. This is actually the mother hanging out after she's already lived her life, and she's sucking the juices out with her eggs underneath her. And then in the spring, the crawlies, they're called, they're just little orange guys. You almost need a little hand scope to check them out. But once those are out and about, you can just use insecticidal soap or even just soap, and it suffocates them. Otherwise, the best way to do this treatment is just a trunk treatment where they spray about 6 to 12 inches all the way around the trunk. It gets into the vascular system. It gets them before they feed, or while they're feeding, excuse me, and it just kills them off. That's the most effective. Another good way of noticing the spruce scale is never on this year's growth. So you know those really nice blue candles that come off Colorado blue in the spring? Scale's never on that, it's on last year's. And then the crawlies move to that in years. And then the next year, they'll be fine and the scale will be on the next year. So it has that, it works with the tree. A lot of times if it's really bad, like the entire tree looks like it's dead except for the new growth, that's probably scale that ate or sucked all the juices off the old needles, and the new needles are just trying like heck to survive. Another good way to kind of get rid of this is vacuum up all the needles that are down below, because the crawlies can be in that and then come back up the tree. If you're a real tree dork, you vacuum up needles. The next one, I've just been seeing this the last couple of years, which kind of blew me away because it's a Midwest deal, because it's a moisture thing. I didn't even find it on CSU, it was like Minnesota and Wisconsin websites. But Rhabdophyria needlecast, this is also one that's easily treatable, but it just kind of browns out the needles. I've been seeing this quite a bit on younger ones. So if you have something like this going on, give me a call. I'll check it out to make sure. In fact, it is, but it's like a little mold, little black dots on the needle. Pretty easy to see, especially with the hand lens. But you want to treat this before it creeps up the rest of your tree and kills the entire tree. But with this, you know, even spruce trees are really good at coming back. So if you pruned off that dead, it'll come back. Pondos not so much, but spruce trees do like to come back after you prune. Yeah, not too crazy, but I haven't seen it, so that's why I wanted to present on it, especially in landscape trees. That's my guess is how it got here, was a couple landscape trees came up with it, and now it's just getting spread by birds and whatnot. Doug fir, I mean, what a great tree. I love this tree. It's not, it doesn't get hit by a whole lot of things. I mean, there's the fir beetle, they get mistletoe, they get gall, but up around here, they just seem to do well. Like landscape trees, they do okay, but in the forest, I haven't seen a whole lot getting after these guys in this valley. So that's really all I have to say about this. And Chile, we have like the fourth, I think now it's the fourth biggest fir in Colorado, over by Chile. You guys know about it. It's a secret. It's a great tree. But if you're over by Chile Camp, and there's that subdivision right to the south of it, if you get up high or even lower, just look kind of towards that drainage, and you're just gonna see this giant tree, bigger than anything else. And if you follow it, it's Chile, it's this big. I've hugged it a few times, I've sat under it. It's just a great, beautiful tree. It's on Chile property, but there's kind of a trail to it. Definitely worth checking out. I wasn't gonna talk about Chile, but I had to. It's just a great tree. Next one, Briscoe pine. You don't see a whole lot of them around. We plant a few of them in our landscape. These are in front of Town Hall by the bus drop. The elk like them. And this one, the only thing I was gonna say about this is it does have like some white tufts on it, but don't be concerned. It's not scale. It's just the natural way the Briscoe pine does things. So, but besides that, it takes a long time to grow. It's all weird looking, and it's cool if you like weird trees. Limber pine, another high elevation tree. Not much down here in the landscape. Up in the park for sure. A lot of the park got hit with white pine blister rust. They've been up there actively replanting seedlings that they say isn't as susceptible to white pine blister rust. So, you know, they're up in the forest, up in the tundra, right on that really, really cold area. Some of the oldest trees in the world right here. That's about it for that one.
Is that a bug that does it?
No, it's like a fungus rust. It's like kind of a fungus rust thing. I don't know much about it because I don't deal with it much. It's all up there. It's my neighbor's problem. Park. That's a great neighbor to have, by the way, but it's their problem. Lodgepole pine, not really a landscape tree, or down in the valley tree on the mountain sides, usually north facing. They love growing together. These are also susceptible to mountain pine beetle. Their bark is a lot thinner than pondos, so they're way more susceptible to mountain pine beetle than the pondo. And that's where you're seeing like full stands just totally die. Again, there, 2013 was really, the flood sucked for sure, but after that, our moisture has been really good, and our trees have been responding very well to not getting totally smoked out by their native foes. And, I call lodgepole the matchstick of the forest, because it just burns so crazy. I'm also a firefighter down in Glen Haven. We watched the fire just rip through lodgepole forest. So this is good to see, because lodgepoles, they come right back. That all that green you see on the lower level, that's all little baby lodgepoles getting ready to give her hell again. That's all I got. Oh, and lodgepole is not so susceptible to road salt. So we're planting that on our roadside because all of our pondos are dying due to the mad chloride that CDOT puts down.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you've noticed 34, 36,
Yeah.
almost every pondo that CDOT plows next to is dying. Up on our neighbors, the ski towns and whatnot, they've been using lodgepole for their street trees basically, and they're doing fine with all the salt that they gotta throw down. So we're trialing that out at the new common park over by the parking garage that we just set up for a screen, so you don't have to hear the highway and the kids don't run into the highway and all that fun stuff. But yeah, I'll let you know, they're babies now. I think they're gonna do great.
I was told that you can't make little tree teepees of lodge poles because they like their neighbors. They want to be surrounded by each other.
If they start out being surrounded by each other, they'll do fine. Lodgepoles can grow. They don't grow as quick when they're single, but they can grow singly.
Okay.
If you cut a strip through a lodgepole forest, usually the wind will smoke the windward side of that strip, because they did get comfortable growing up with their neighbors' structure, their root system, their windbreak. So if you eliminate some part of that, you will have a lot of growth out.
Okay.
All right. My nemesis is on the left, and it's a really nice tree on the right. Buffalo juniper, and 70s, 80s, even in the 90s, everybody and their mother was planting this right around their house, right? And now that canopy came through and the skies were black and red and crazy, it looked like hell, now everybody wants them gone, and they're a lot bigger, because they won't have them up against their house. So we stopped planting these 12 years ago when I got here, I figured. But they're great, they grow well, but they're very quick to start on fire. And everyone put them next to their house so an ember can get this thing going, and it just blows up the house real quick. So Buffalo juniper bad, Rocky Mountain juniper good. It's also native. It's a great drought tolerant tree. The juniper and the ponderosa have been living together in harmony forever. It's a great pondo forest tree. You can pretty much plant it, and once it's established, you can forget it. It doesn't need a lot of water. And I'm just making this up, but they have the blueberries so you can make jam. I don't know. Anything like. But a great tree, also a matchstick. I know Essex Valley Fire hates them. The reason I don't think they're so bad, if you have them all alone, it's not a bad deal. If you have them underneath a tree or your gutter, it could be a ladder fuel. They're a great habitat tree, birds like them, rabbits love them, but they have their downfalls, and basically the only one is that they can, just If it's all by itself, it'll just burn real quick, be done with it.
What was the one on the left?
Buffalo juniper. Buffalo juniper, more of a landscape juniper. And it does do well up here, but just don't plant it next to your house, I guess. That'd be my firefighter side saying that. Everyone's favorite. Yeah, this thing, it's a great tree, my favorite tree. It hates me for some reason. Been trying to plant this in places. It's one of the hardest trees to plant in the landscape for me for some reason. It's a water-loving tree. It says Colorado all over it. Elk love it, so you gotta fence the thing. But this is its home, you know, this is its great elevation. It wants to be here, but it just needs some loving. It needs a water vane or something like that, irrigation. Obviously in Estes, it needs a fence, just for the elk and the deer. And it does come with its fair share of problems, and we got all of them here in the valley. Trunk rot, that happens all the time here. Pretty easy to tell. You can tap on it, it sounds hollow, you got trunk rot. Otherwise, you can see mushrooms coming out on that picture on the right. It kind of gives you evidence of trunk rot. Aspen leaf miner, I see this quite a bit. I also see a lot of spots, leaf spot, black spot. A lot of these things can be cured pretty easily with just the trunk treatment, or most of the trees that I get called on, people just plant it so you can spray the whole tree. But if you clean up the leaves, or let the wind clean up the leaves, just as long as you're getting that stuff out of there, it's less likely for it to come back, especially after you treat it. But I know everyone loves aspen, but they just come with a lot of problems. Just know that. But a great tree. And I said it hates me, right? Yeah, I got a whole sheet right here. I think it's got 7 different leaf deals that the aspen comes with. And each one of them is up here in the Estes Valley. I should plug CSU Extension, because holy cow, if you ever want to know anything about the trees, or what's going on with the tree, go to CSU Extension. I guarantee you they have some sort of document that explains the whole kit to boot on how to get rid of it. So CSU Extension, great partner to have, a lot of great information. I go to them a lot, and there's also different, like Tree Dork websites that you can just ask stupid tree questions, and really smart people come back with answers. So that's out there too. I use that too.
So this varmint here is the aspen destroyer?
I see it sometimes. I see a lot more black spot up here than this, but this is a great picture. So I threw it on there. But this one's easy to get rid of too. I mean, just a trunk treatment. It'll get into the vascular system, kill it off.
Okay.
Yeah, but they just go through it. And a lot of these aren't killers of the tree.
A lot of what?
A lot of these aren't killers of the tree. Like I said about mistletoe and needle miner, they're an annoyance. But if you let it go too far, if the tree can't work its magic, photosynthesis, it's gonna slowly decline. And then maybe it's susceptible to something that might come in and kill it. All right, you gave me an hour and I thought I was gonna be way faster. I think I'm not. So hopefully you're all still interested. No one's sleeping yet, that's good. Cottonwood, man, cottonwood, what a great tree, but also a very dangerous tree. It's a real soft tree. Grows really fast, grows in our riparian area. We have, our natives up here are mostly the thin leaf cottonwood. Down the river drainages, we got them up and down Elkhorn. I love the tree because it's so fast growing. It's a great deciduous tree, gives great shade in the summer. But with that fast growth, it's also a very weak tree. So that means it's susceptible to a lot of branch breaking with our heavy snows in the spring, just blowing over because of our winds here in the winter. But down in the river bottoms, they seem to do pretty good. The visitor center is a great example of some great trees, but with our wind, you can see the tops are dying off on it. If there was more of them, I think that wouldn't happen, but we have just a selective spot where they grow. Our street trees are doing pretty good. That's over by US Bank, it's still called US Bank? Yeah. We have a strip over there, but yeah, great, fast growing tree. You want something quick, this is a good one. The only real problem that we have here in the valley with them is aphids above them. So with aphids, you get aphid poop, and with that, you get the sticky stuff all over your car or the sidewalk or whatnot. Another thing that won't kill it, but it's an annoyance. I tried to release, ladybugs for the aphid problem, but they just fly off. I tried that a couple times and I stopped. Ants love the aphids, they'll actually protect the aphids because they use their waste as something to eat. So if you have too many ladybugs on the aphids, the ants will attack the ladybugs. That's a really weird fight to have with the poop, but that's what it is. Just another tree door joke. Alders, these are great riparian area trees, really cool red bark. The flood of 2013, you could totally tell who had alders and willows on their banks and who had turf, because the people with alders and willows on their banks had their banks still, and people with turf did not. So it just goes to show that Mother Nature has been dancing together for a lot longer than us and our love of bluegrass. So you got a riverside place, leave it natural, and you'll have it. That's all I gotta say about Elder. Well, in the park, man, isn't it crazy what's been going on in those fenced areas? Yeah. It's amazing. How long have we been up? 7, 8 years? Something like that?
12 years.
10, okay. And it's just insane. You keep the elk out, and all of a sudden you got a riparian area. These are great, fast-growing riverbank stabilizer. Beavers love them, obviously. We have a few ornamentals that we've planted throughout the years for bank stabilization. But that's really all these guys got going on for them. Part of the natural world, obviously. Not really too many things that just smoke the whole thing, the whole plant or the whole ecosystem besides elk and moose. But just another native that we have up here. That's pretty much all. The only reason I had that in here. And of course the elk. We got plenty of those. I hate elk. I'll give him that. Now I'd like to switch gears, how to plant a tree. I know a lot of us love planting trees, or hopefully love planting trees, or want to plant a tree, and I just want to go through the proper steps of doing so, in case you wanted to do something. The best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago, and the next best time is today, right? You've all heard that. There's usually a couple different styles that come out of, I guess I got too far ahead of myself. Does anybody have any questions about natives, or anything I didn't touch on? Probably should have done that. No? Sweet, I covered it all. Right? Okay. What's up?
I was hoping you were gonna show maybe some big tooth maple up here.
You know,
Is that coming up later?
no.
Is that the Rocky Mountain maple?
What do we have, 3 in Mrs. Walsh's garden? I don't think we planted it in any of our landscape. It's up in the park quite a bit.
I thought you had some near Performance Park. Yeah. Anyway, I've got one that's 2 years old and I'm treating it like a baby.
How is it?
Great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Pretty slow growing, though, right?
Well, it provides enough shade for one chair that my husband is happy. So that really counts.
Right on.
Yeah.
Oh, with Big Tooth, Rocky Mountain maple. I should have said something about them too. Yeah, Rocky Mountain
Yes,
maple is more of a shrub here. However, they've gotten a nursery stock and they kind of hacked it up. And now we do have a couple of those as ornamental trees. They're never gonna get that big, like the maples you think on the east. But that is also native. I should have focused more on citrus trees. So, I should have done that instead of like the willow. Yeah, totally. Note to self. Kathy wants big tooth maple and I want Rocky Mountain maple. Great colors in the fall.
That's right.
Great red color. Yep, good call, Kathy. Thank you. Email me, remind me. Thank you. All right, how to plant a tree. Two ways they really come out of the nursery that we have access to. I guess there's a third way, but not a lot of people use that yet. But I'll go into the two most common. On your left, that's the ball of burlap. That's probably 10 years ago the most common tree sent out for planting. These are dug up in the nursery by a spade. Usually take anywhere from 30 to 70% of the root mass off. When they dig them up, they put them in this nice little ball. They have a wire cage on them. Makes it easier to ship. But just make sure you got a strong back or a ball cart, because there can be up to hundreds of pounds. I think that's why the nursery places start going to the potted trees. They're a lot lighter. All the root mass is contained, which has its own set of problems. And now, the third one that I'll just quickly mention is the bare root tree. A lot of places send that out when it's little saplings, so you can have no soil at all. They just come in moist and you plop them in the ground and sort the roots so they're nice and flat. Doing all this stuff, I think they're a little too tedious for people. That's why they don't do them, and you gotta keep them wet, you gotta keep them cold. So it's got a couple problems. That's why the nursery stock goes to what people like the most, easiest. And these two are definitely the easiest and most common. 6 things. When I plant a tree, planted a couple in my life. You always want to dig way wider than you think, because you want those roots the first couple of years to start going out in that nice new soil that you dug up and didn't make so hard. So I always think of a giant saucer. If I have a ball about this big, or a container tree, I dig out about this big. And just make sure you have all that soil broken up so the roots have no problem getting out in there to start to stabilize itself and gain new nutrients. Handle with care. Obviously, you don't drag a tree by the top. I try to only touch the container or the ball. If it's a real horse, sometimes you gotta grab it right by where the trunk meets the ball or the container. That's not so bad, but just be careful. If you start ripping it around, you're breaking off the roots. And like I said, 30 to 70% of the roots are cut off in the nursery before it's put into this nice little ball. So it's already stressed beyond belief. The container plants aren't as stretched, so you can kind of wiggle them around, but I'll go into what you gotta do with those in a minute or two. Planting depth is key. There's a trunk taper on almost every tree, and that's where you want on the soil level, right? You don't want to plant a telephone pole. If a tree looks like a telephone pole, it's planted too deep because it doesn't have that natural taper. If you don't have that natural taper coming off where the roots want to be, and it's filled up above the root zone, advantageous roots can grow, and those can actually go around the trunk and kill it by suffocation. So I got a couple pictures coming up. Let's get that real quick. This is a B&B tree, right? So in the nursery, when it's sitting in the rows, and instead of killing off all the weeds, they just kind of till them, and that tilling just puts the soil back under the trees. So you can see this is that trunk taper I was talking about, right? That's that first little bit of root right there. All of this is just added soil, sloughed over. You want to get rid of all that, so the advantageous roots don't start growing around here and circle the tree and cut it off. It's no longer as simple as putting the ball in the hole and walking away. I think it's important to really take your time and do everything you can at this stage so that you have a tree that's more than 50 to 60 years. I remember my first gig, one of the older guys was like, hey, just put it in and leave the wire in there, leave the burlap. I was like, why? Shouldn't you take all this out? He's like, no, if you leave the wire in, these hooks, once it dies, it's really easy to just yank it back out. I thought, oh boy, that's, all right. I'm gonna go plant trees over here. But you can see on the picture on the right, the right way, the wrong way. And the other thing this picture doesn't say is that there's adaptation trees. They'll be coming off of here on certain species of trees. You can just girdle the tree and kill it. So container trees, they got their own set of problems, right? So this tree is like a little baby, they put it in a container, then they take it out of that container, put it in another container, and so on until they get the size that they want and the container that they want. However, the roots keep growing, right? And as soon as they hit that plastic, they just keep on going round and round and round. So this one's really, really bad. But on container trees that aren't this bad, when I pop them out of the container, I'll actually shave 1 to 3 inches of soil off, straight down, try to knock off all these circling roots. And that promotes new root growth going straight out to stabilize the tree. It takes some more time, but it's worth it in the end because structurally, this tree is never going to be able to properly anchor itself either. And our winds, without those roots out anchoring it, it'll just blow over. But this tree was dead before we planted it, really. It had no chance because all those adaptation roots are girdling it and it just looks like heck. That doesn't look like what a tree should look like, right? Watering, see it's funny, the picture on the left is a telephone pole, right? So they haven't planted that way too deep. You can kind of tell just by looking at it. The tree on the right, you can kind of see that trunk flare starting right below that bag. But anything up here, when you're planting any sort of tree, I think it's great to establish it, even drought tolerant trees for the first year or two. Watering. Downtown, we have this fake ecosystem, fake soil, a whole lot of trees that don't belong here. But we water the heck out of them, right? That's what keeps them alive, we fertilize them. That's why our downtown is not the best example of what we can do in our yards, but it's okay. But it costs a lot, it takes a lot of time. That's why we have all those different trees. But our watering system downtown, and for most trees, I like every 3 to 4 days, saturate the heck out of them and leave them. Because not only do trees need water, they also need oxygen. So if you have them just sitting in a water hole, they're gonna die. If you dry them out too much, they're gonna die. But that first year or two is really, really key to establishing, to get out of what the roots that were cut off either in the nursery when they balled them. You want those roots to start growing out, or after you cut the container tree, you want those roots to start growing out. So you start with the water here, and then you bring it out farther and farther and farther and farther, encouraging that root growth to travel. Make sense? Nodding heads right now. Pruning, this is big. I think people don't do enough of it, but there's an art to it. For sure. Even some of our tree care folks don't do the art like they should. So you can get on them if you see them out there and they're pruning your trees. Make sure you identify how you want your tree pruned. This 1, 2, 3 cut is beat into every tree cutter's mind because this way, that first cut up and under. The reason you do that, because when that second cut comes down, that branch has all kinds of crazy weight, right? And if it just swings down, it could rip the bark all the way down into the trunk, but if you have that first cut in there, the bark rip stops there, right? And then all that weight's alleviated from that branch, you know what I mean? And then that third cut, the branch collar is key, right? This is between the trunk and the branch. This is the little fight that the trunk and the branch have been doing ever since that branch has been growing. So this is actually trunk wood, and this is branch wood. You make that third cut, allowing this branch collar to stay there, that's gonna enable the tree to heal that wound a lot faster, right? Because that's what this trunk has been trying to do against this branch, because they don't talk very well. So we've been trying to heal, and as soon as this is gone, it's gonna keep trying to heal. That's where you see that kind of, I don't know what kind of shape that is, but around any wound, the tree trunk is trying to heal itself over years and years and years. Couple good cuts. The one thing that's really hard to find on spruce is branch collar. It's like barely there. So don't think of the spruce as having much of a branch collar. That's the one on the right. The one on the left is deciduous. So it's got more of a prevalent branch collar. Pondos have a great branch collar. You can see those really easy. You can see where they're cut. Doug fir, bigger Doug fir branches have a branch collar. The smaller ones, not so much. But just as long as you can not get to the trunk like the ones on the right here. So those eliminated the branch collar. So, and actually got into the trunk. So this is going to take the trunk a lot longer to heal over this wound. And basically any pruning cut is a wound to the tree that wants to heal over it. And then the one on the left, they didn't do the first cut, right? So it just ripped right on down. And that's another trunk wound that's going to take longer for the tree to heal. You'll see a few of these downtown where the snow loader is taking some branches and ripped down on the trunk. And you'll see a couple of the ashes trying to get over it. But yeah, if you do good cuts, you shouldn't have this problem. Or if you make sure your contractor does good cuts. So,
Is there a good time or a bad time to prune a tree based on like beetle infection or whatever might have in a oak tree?
yeah, I always do winter.
Winter?
Yeah, winter. I mean, it sucks to be out in the winter, but no bugs are around in the winter. And a lot of your molds or any other infections aren't around in the winter. So that's my favorite time to prune anything. And it gets you outside in the wind. This is just not a structural cut, but a thinning cut. A lot of the trees we bring up, speaking of the Parks Division, aren't native to this area, so we like to just allow more air intake through them, and this just leads to a stronger branch setup as well for our snow load. So if you have a bunch of little branches inside of the tree's putting energy in all these little branches, right? And it's just growing as fast as it can. And you start taking off some of those smaller branches, it's gonna put more energy into the branches it has and strengthening them to make them more resilient against our snow and wind loads. If that makes sense. I say that a lot. But so used to talking to other tree dorks. Yeah, I want to make sure I'm presenting it right. This is just crown reduction. We don't do this a lot except for downtown. If there's some signage that people want to be able to see, like a stop and go light or something like that, we'll do that for those. The one on the right is a great picture of how to thin the tree. A lot more air circulation. That allows the tree to dry out, and these branches are going to be much stronger in the end because all the energy is going to just a few branches instead of a ton. Another prune. I actually found this one out by the fish hatchery, the one on the left. So the utility line, they don't want anything touching the utility lines, but they pruned the heck out of this spruce, and it was such a beautiful tree. That I was so embarrassed for this tree that I actually just cut it down because now it's just so top heavy, it was gonna blow over anyways. But yeah, it made me feel bad for this tree. So we cut it down actually, but it's good with fire to keep trees off of power lines. I agree with it. It makes sense, but if you're gonna do it, don't do it like that. Please. And the other one's just another way of lion tailing, just because it looks like a lion's tail on top of the top. I think that's where the name came from. They proved out all the inside of the branches and left the tops. You know, up here, this would not work with our winds. Those branches, grew with all those other little branches protecting it, and now you just make it susceptible and it's top heavy. One big wind like today, and all those suckers are gonna snap. Fire mitigation has been big on a lot of people's mind recently, and for good reason. Talked about the juniper, what problems that has. Spruce, Doug fir, if they're kind of left alone, they'll be a lot lower to the ground. We raised, actually the one on the left up, or the one on the right, sorry, up, because elk kept smoking those lower branches, so we just raised those up. But it's a great picture for fire mitigation. The tree on the left is another great tree. I mean, rabbits love the habitat, but fire creeps towards this tree, it's gonna light the whole thing up. And that's pretty obvious. I think everyone's been a lot better at that these last two years it's been since camping. Yeah. So just keep that in mind, touching the ground, it's probably gonna go up. If there's a juniper under a pondo, it's probably gonna go up. But if it's an evergreen, it's gonna go up. But that's what we got. Ponderosa forest, like I said before, ponderosa and oak savannas are very similar, and they grew up with fire. So, so that's why in the natural state of things, they'll be in clumps, 2s, 3s, 4s, and then they'll be separated. You know, their brothers and sisters would be down the way. But that's kind of the natural ponderosa forest. Ponderosa bark is a lot hardier, a lot stronger, resists fire, even after it's burnt. You can go check out, you know, Glenhaven, especially the retreat area. A lot of those pondos got smoked on the bark, and they're still doing fine 2 years later. So again, Mother Nature, they've been doing this dance for thousands of years. We're just messing it all up. Jump in again in fencing. It's Estes. Everyone loves our elk. Everyone loves our deer, but if you want anything to grow, you gotta pretty much fence it off. Everyone knows that. I don't believe there's anything that deer and elk don't eat, even though you can go to a nursery and they swear by it down in the valley, and you bring it up here, you see an elk walking with it in its mouth. Hence my hatred of elk. Yeah, you just smoke everything. Bulls find trees that aren't fenced and you kill it. The cows eat on them all winter long. They're just a pain in my butt. But if you want something, that's it. And black fencing doesn't look as bad if you want to spend the extra money. But just fence it, and you won't call me. Some other trees, if you wanted to know about them, that don't really belong here. I think I have 1 or 2 that belong here. But what we've been trialing downtown and actually been doing really well. We have a lot of other trees that we're still trialing that I won't mention until they work. But just jump into that in case you wanted to plant a tree in your yard that wasn't a native. Here we go. Ash trees, actually don't plant these. We have so many downtown. If you want to look at an ash tree, go downtown, but don't plant it in your yard because sooner or later, this guy's coming. The emerald ash borer, if anybody's from the east, we're well aware of this little bug. This is taking out every ash tree in the United States, basically. And its last known sighting is in lions. So it's just a matter of time. It was in Kansas City for a while, didn't have no problems here in Colorado, but somebody brought firewood and I think Boulder called it out first. Yeah, it was Boulder. And now it's pretty much everywhere on the Front Range. I'm willing to bet. They say it's not in the springs, but I'm guessing they're wrong. It usually takes about 3 years before you really know that you got it. I thought we had it up here last year because our ash trees were just sucking it up. And literally sucking it up, shooting suckers out like crazy, which is a great sign of emerald ash borer. But it was a scale that we had that I didn't find out about until it was too late. So that's why we removed a lot of those ash trees downtown. We're not planting any more ash because of this little bug. So just FYI, if you wanna see an ash tree, go downtown, at least for the next 5 years, we'll have them. We'll see after that. Maples, I'm from Wisconsin, so I love maples, great tree up here. But you gotta baby them. You know, we have autumn blaze maple, which does really well in our area. They are susceptible to chlorosis and acidic soils, so before you plant it in your yard, just make sure you don't have really acidic soils. And this will do great fall color, actually spectacular. None of ours are big yet, because we just started planting probably 7 years ago, but they look real good, fast growing. It's a cross between a red maple and a silver maple. Silver maple is known to be fast growing. So this tree just does really well in our landscape areas. The one on the far right is the Tatarian maple. This one's actually the hot wing Tatarian maple. It's more of an ornamental maple, probably gonna get 20-25 feet tall. Real nice spread on it. If you don't keep it pruned, it kind of wants to be a bush. But it's, you know, those helicopter seeds that are known for maples, on this sucker it comes out bright red. It's just spectacular. And a lot of ours have been fall color and red as well. So, great little ornamental tree. Oaks, I know of 5 oaks in town, minus Gamblin or Scrub, that we planted. The 2 I didn't plant, the 2 biggest oaks, they're sitting right next to the fairgrounds on their dump station. If you've ever been by there, those are the 2 biggest oaks in town. I'm sure they're up in that waste, and that's why they're doing so well. We have one in Bond, and there's a hidden one over by the flyer shop by Berg Square. I'm not gonna tell you about it, it's not doing great. But yeah, great tree. If you're around for a long time, you might see it get past 10 feet. But they're still growing, they're hardy, pretty cool fall color. Yes, a great Midwestern tree that we've been trying, and it's doing pretty darn good. This guy, you know, we all have chokecherry bushes somewhere. We all know where they are. We all grab the berries. This is native. However, some guy up north decided to make it into a tree. So it's called Canadian red chokecherry. Great ornamental tree. Again, probably won't get much higher than 25 or 30 feet tops. Cool green leaves in spring. Switch over to this great purple come summer. Great berries for wildlife. Wants to be a bush, so you gotta keep it pruned, except for this new one that they just came out with. It's called sucker punch chokecherry. So you crossbred it with something else, and it doesn't have suckers. So if you want a tree, go with the sucker punch. If you want a Canadian red chokecherry bush, or you like pruning suckers, get that. We have a few locusts out here. Another great hardy tree. However, this one really hates our wind, and a lot of the new growth fades almost every year because of our drying wind over there. Total hawthorn, yeah, we have 20 of these. Really cool flowers, really cool yellow and green bark. It doesn't have the thorns, even though it has a hawthorn, they bred it out of them. But really cool ornamental. We have, yeah, they're not gonna get past 20 feet out here, but nice. Oh, wait, if I go back, I forgot to say something about the chokecherries. Awesome flowers. Man, they smell great, right? Walking down the river walk in the spring, you smell that, that's the chokecherry. Really, really cool. That's probably my favorite part about that tree. To hawthorn. Hackberry, we got like 3, another hardy tree. Takes a while to grow, but they're doing all right here. Oh, a little bit over time, sorry. We're wrapping up anyways. So, like we stated earlier, if you ever have any questions about trees, you can call me. Happy to come on out and see your trees if you live in town limits. Or if you live outside of town limits, you can email me pictures or call me and I'll talk you through it. I do work for the town of Estes Park. That's who pays my bills. Oh, and a lot of these trees downtown, we have signs planned too. So if you're ever interested, and you say I like that tree, it probably has a sign down below it. bam, that's me, my phone number, my email. Thank you for your time. That's about it.
Oh, there's a question.
Questions?
Merle Moore's here.
Yep.
And he and you did a lot of work on the recommended plant list the town has. 2 comments. Number one, anybody who's interested in plants should take a look at that list. It's rather extensive. I wish it was a little more prioritized and simpler, but it's rather extensive. It has both natives and non-natives in it, and it's an excellent resource. The other thing I wanted to mention was that I've had tremendous success with purple hawthorns, with the Canada red choke cherries, and with the hot wings maples. Anything in particular you really like that would go with those, that has flowering deciduous trees? We have so many pines, I like to do the deciduous.
There's some great cranberry trees too that do well here.
Great flower, nice
Yeah,
too.
great flowering. We have some great examples down at the Visitor Center or right in front of Town Hall. Just get the hardiest ones that they sell. There's so many different subspecies and hacks. Just make sure you get the hardy one and fence it for sure.
The other thing I would like to mention about the plant list, it's very hard to find. If you do a search for Estes Park recommended plants, you will not find them. You have to go to the Parks Advisory Board website on the park system, and underneath there will be the plant list.
Yeah.
You might want to have the IT people try to get a better connection for online searches.
I'm glad you didn't ask me to do it. I'd screw it up. But yeah, it's a great resource and it's available. Estes.org, Parks Advisory Board, boom, it's right there. Sir?
From a fire-wise point of view, where I have aspens up against the structure, can those be transplanted?
Deciduous trees and fire don't scare me that much. Evergreens and fire do. Yes, aspens can burn with the right amount of heat, but it's not usually something that scares me about having too close to the house unless it's damaging the gutters or the soffit. Transplanting aspen is a skill I don't have. Yes, it can be done. You can get in there with a spade, but if it's that close to your foundation, I'm guessing not. My suggestion would be is to fence off pockets where you might want that aspen to be, because it's probably got roots out there and it's been sending out shoots, but the deer and the elk have just been eating them.
All right, thank you.
Well, Brian, you were great. Thank you. You got a lot of information. Before you all go, I just wanted to mention that Andy Ames, right there, raise your hand, is the person who writes our Estes Valley Watershed Coalition Loves Wildlife on Facebook, right?
Yeah, Estes Loves Wildlife or EDWC Loves Wildlife.
Yeah. And his wife next to him writes our newsletter, Rachel Ames. So if you are a member, you're getting the newsletter and it's full of information, very readable. And how many members, are you all members of Wandering Wildlife Society?
So Wandering Wildlife Society is our outreach group of the Estes Valley Watershed Coalition.
So they're kind of one and the same.
Yeah, if
But
you
we
want to
would love
become
for
a
you to
member,
join us.
yeah, please join us.
Sign
Let's
up
see,
sheet.
it's what, $35 a person or $60 for a family. And we have monthly wildlife talks, which can be the plant system or the animals that
Come up
Brian
here and
hates.
learn more after the talk if you're interested.
Yes,
And the Estes Valley Watershed Coalition is a listed Amazon Smile charity, so you can have your Amazon purchases contribute a small
Yeah.
part to that coalition.
and we're the group that is doing a lot of fire mitigation. So we've got grants. The person who does the grants is Will Informeller right here, who's holding up our whole organization like a tree. So we have grants to protect our forests, thinning, burning in some cases, and we have grants to protect our waters. So we're planting willows in the riparian areas every year and pulling invasives. So we're doing a lot for the Estes Valley habitats. So look for us in the paper. We usually have something in the paper every month. So thanks for coming, everybody, and thank you, Brian. You were great.
Thanks.
A lot of information.
Good times.
It is.